Got another WVGunsNGoats tabletop video for y'all. Got a Stag 15 lower receiver here. Now, before you click off this video because you're so familiar with the AR-15 lower receiver, as they say, it's what's inside that counts. And what's inside this lower right here is a really interesting electromechanical trigger system. You could call it a digital trigger, and that's because it's by the company Digitrigger. This is their 2.2 digital trigger. And they were nice enough to send this over to us for this video so I could show it off to all y'all out there watching and hopefully answer the two main questions that people have about a digital trigger system. That's the battery life and what happens when their battery dies, as well as the legality of having a digital trigger system. But I'm going to answer those questions, and I'm also going to show you the features of this system and the two different modes, because it's not just a single trigger mode. It has dual firing modes on this system, which is really cool in one lower receiver. Now, if you do have any other questions about this system, feel free to leave it in the comments section below. I'll try to answer it there, or I'll answer those questions in the next video when we take this out to the range and we put some rounds through it and see how it is to shoot with a digital trigger system. However, before we get started, if you're not a herd member yet, how about you go ahead and headbutt that subscribe button to join the herd here at WVGunsNGoats. Before y'all jump into the comments section and want to tell me how digital triggers on semi-autos are illegal, well, one, with the almost 10 years that Digitrigger has been in business, they would have already heard from ATF if they had a problem with their product. In fact, if we go to the Digitrigger FAQ or legal page, I'll pull it up right here. Unfortunately, I can't tell you their website, but it's pretty easy to find. We find here, well, first we come across an excerpt from an ATF letter that says binary triggers are not machine guns, pull and release triggers. And that's on there because this trigger, in addition to having a standard pull mode, a standard one shot per trigger pull, it also has a binary mode. So you get a shot per trigger pull and a shot per trigger release with just the flip of a switch. If we scroll down a little bit farther, we're going to come to your concerns here when it talks about electronic or fly-by-wire triggers on semi-autos. The ATF says as long as it's not firing more than one shot per trigger pull, then it is legal. So they've already got that covered here on their website. Next, I hear people going to say, well, you could just hack that to be an illegal machine gun. It's digital. You can hack anything digital. And I'm sure with enough work, you could hack anything digital. However, Digitrigger has put many different safeguards into this grip. One is the motherboard is completely sealed against the elements, so you'd have to find a way to get all that sealing material off that motherboard. And the next is you'd have to upload new firmware into this grip. And if this grip detects that someone other than the factory is trying to access it, the motherboard will overwrite the firmware to prevent it from being accessed, and it bricks the grip, and you have to send it back to them, and then they're going to have questions about what you were doing trying to tinker around inside their grip. So I hope that covers that when it comes to the legal stuff. The next thing I know people are concerned about is this has a battery involved in it. And that's true that batteries do die, but look at all the things on our rifles that are battery powered, red dots, flashlights, etc. Now, this is a hybrid trigger system. It's not just a digital trigger. So, people are asking, what happens if my battery dies? Can I still use it? Well, you have two options if your battery dies. You have a quick way and a longer way to solve that. The quick way, you flip that to fire, and you're back in a completely mechanical fire mode. You're back in a standard AR-15 trigger works the same as any other AR-15 trigger, and the safety is completely mechanical as well. The digital system does not interfere with the traditional mechanical settings on the AR-15. Only when you're in the digital system do you get the Digitrigger system working. So when you're only at the third position, does the digital system turn on and work to fire the firearm. The longer way, if your battery dies, is to change your battery. You just flip that to the side, take your 9-volt battery out, your standard smoke detector 9-volt battery. There's no leads that you have to attach to the battery. You just take your new battery, drop it into your grip there, and put your cover back on, and you're ready to go back in digital fire mode. Now, why a 9-volt battery? Why not one of these fancy CR123s, 18650s, etc.? Well, I asked Digitrigger that, and they said that in their testing, they got the most shots out of a 9-volt battery. And this covers the next question that people have. How long does the battery last? And this battery is good for about 2,000 rounds. Of course, if you're out there shooting in binary, you're probably going to hit that fairly quickly. So just carry a couple other 9-volt batteries with you. Now, when you go to store your gun with your Digitrigger on it, you're going to want to make sure that you're in fire or safe. If you leave it in digital mode, the battery will drain after a few days. And that's also a safety. They didn't want people who store their firearms loaded, ready to go, to pick their gun up and suddenly be surprised by a super light trigger pull in digital. Speaking of that trigger pull, yes, it is very light. If we watch it here, it has a very short reset because you're actually just activating a micro switch. The micro switch activates the motherboard. The motherboard tells the solenoid to activate, and it kicks up on the back of the trigger. Now, this has its own trigger and hammer components in it, and if you want to install this system, it is a little bit of a task to do so. However, Digitrigger offers it as a complete lower ready to go. I think they also have some of these as complete guns on their website. You can get this as just the system to install it yourself, and they have a very good tutorial on their website, on YouTube, about how to install this system. And if you're actually interested in a closer look at the internals of this system, I would check that video out. So on the back of this grip, we see we have a grip safety, and this grip safety does not interfere with the mechanical trigger at all. It's only there for the electronic mode, and that's because of how light the trigger is. They wanted to add an additional safety to that. Also back here, we have our firing mode selector switch. This is pull and release when it's down, pull only when it's up. And I don't know if you can see it, but there is an indicator LED that flashes depending on which mode you're on. When it's pull only, it's green. Pull and release, it's red. So here's pull and release. And you can get used to shooting this. You kind of have to get used to the rhythm. But you can put a lot of rounds downrange in that binary mode. This grip safety also has another function to it. And that's, say you're out shooting in binary modes. You're banging away. Oh, I need to stop shooting. I can let off of the grip safety and let the trigger out, and that will cancel the next shot. I can also pull and hold the trigger for about 6 or so seconds. Just hold it back, keep holding it, and when you release, it cancels the second shot. So you have two ways involving this grip safety to cancel your second binary shot. Because it's such a light trigger pull, and because you're only activating a micro switch, you don't have a wall that you would have with a traditional trigger. So if you're used to shooting precision triggers where you're pulling back against the wall, well, there is no wall here. And that is one reason that people try to get lighter triggers on their precision guns, because you're trying to make that trigger break as light as possible so you don't impart any movement left or right onto the shot when the shot breaks. Well, you don't have any wall here, so you don't have that concern about that extra little bit of movement when the shot breaks. Now I'll show you what it looks like in here. I'll put it in binary so we can see it. When I pull the trigger, you can see the parts moving. So, as I said earlier, that solenoid is pushing a rod up, and it's pushing onto the back of the trigger and tilting the trigger like your traditional trigger pull would, which releases the hammer. The silver piece right here, that is a disconnector protection bridge. If you're familiar with the MPX, the MCX, they have that same bridge because their bolt velocity is very high, and the back of the hammer would sometimes smash into the disconnector and damage the fire control group. And speaking of MCX and MPX, the nice thing about this system is if you have a firearm that takes an AR fire control group and an AR-15 grip, but doesn't necessarily have a binary trigger system or a precision trigger system available for it, there's a good chance that this digital trigger setup would work on that firearm and allow you to have that precision trigger or that faster binary trigger system. So guys, hopefully that covers everything about the Digitrigger system. An interesting way to have a binary trigger and a very nice precision trigger in the same firearm without changing anything but the flip of a switch. Leave any questions or comments down below, and check out the video that's coming eventually when we take this out to the range and actually put some rounds down range with it. This has been another WVGunsNGoats video, everybody, and as always, if you're not out there having fun shooting, well, what are you doing?